the hardest decision or the hardest moment you've ever experienced is still the hardest moment you've ever experienced. So when you're going through
Mhm.
it, you know, there's no difference. So the most important commodity in anything is time. So the
Mhm.
first question when I get put in one of these situations is, when do we have to make the decision,
Mhm.
and how does time work? Does it work against us or does it work for
Mhm.
us? Does our position get better the longer we wait, or does it get
Mhm.
worse the longer we wait? And if I know those two things, I can set the timeline to make that decision.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the podcast and welcome to the Leadership Lab. In these episodes, we're going to sit down with inspiring leaders to unpack their experiences, learn practical wisdom, and just really explore what it means to lead well. And today you get to hear the first conversation I had in this series, a conversation with Stephen M. Johnson. Stephen is a graduate of the United States Military Academy, where he earned a Bachelor of Science in Chemistry and Life Science. He then served in the U.S. Army as a cavalry officer with various roles ranging from platoon leader to battalion commander. Thank you for your service. His military career included multiple deployments to Iraq and Afghanistan. His awards include the Legion of Merit and 2 Bronze Star medals. Stephen also holds a master's in business administration from the Jones Graduate School of Business at Rice University and a master's in military arts and science from the School of Advanced Military Studies. Post-military, Stephen joined the Houston Texans, where he progressed from a consultant and facility project manager to vice president of planning and strategy. In this role, he developed a business strategy that led to the Texans becoming the most improved team in the NFL across 92 metrics measured by the NFL for teams' business operations. Stephen currently serves as the CEO and president of McNair Interest. He is also married to Tracy Briggs and has 2 children, Warner and Cadence. And you are going to love this conversation. We get into what life was like at a military academy, how Stephen thinks about strategy and making decisions under pressure, which is so important in today's environment, and what it means to lead and follow in the military, in sports, in business, in life. I am so glad you're here. You're going to love this conversation. Enjoy. Stephen, thank you so much for joining. I am really looking forward to this conversation. We had such a great conversation about all of your just amazing leadership experiences, educationally, military, business, sports, so family. So I'm really looking forward to hearing and learning more. So thank you for joining.
Really appreciate the invite, and I'm looking forward to the conversation. So thanks for having me.
Yeah. One of the reasons I'm excited about this conversation and our Leadership Lab series is that we know that leadership matters. So, just a couple of stats to start us out. I was looking at a Gallup research study, and it showed that when employees strongly agree that they trust their leader and the organizational leadership in general, those people are 3.5 times as likely to be engaged, excited, involved, just generally happy about their work. And I was thinking personally that, sometimes your leader and your work team are really there to support you through some of the toughest moments, most difficult moments in your life. Like your leader, I've had those experiences myself, can really be supportive in just not only tough work moments, but tough life moments. So that's on one side. And then on the other side of the spectrum, people cite their manager as one of the greatest sources of stress at work. And there's a study that says more than half of us would rather fire our manager than get a raise. So, as leaders, the way I'm thinking
Wow.
about it, yeah, is that you're going to have an impact, one way or the other. And so, I'm hoping these conversations help us all to have the most positive impact that we can on people and on organizations. But I don't know, are any of those stats surprising to you or what resonates with you about any of
Yeah,
it?
I'm really surprised that it's only 3.5 times. I thought it would be even higher,
Mm,
uh, because trust is the bedrock of
yeah.
any organization. If you don't have
Mhm.
trust and you can't trust the people you're working with or for, especially your leader, I
Yeah.
can't imagine. You know, just 3.5 seems low, but I am
Mhm.
shocked that many people said that they would rather fire their manager than get a raise.
Get
That's
it
that's
right.
interesting.
Yeah, that says a lot about leaders and where we are, the crisis of leadership, and also just the impact that we can have on the people that we get a chance to lead. So I guess let's just start. Can you tell us a little bit about your college experience at West Point? I think a lot of us had college experiences, but not all of us that type of experience. So I'm just curious a little bit about kind of your college experience at West Point.
Yeah, it's very interesting to describe because my whole life I've always saw it as normal because I didn't know anything
Mm,
else.
hmm
But it's not a normal experience. I mean, it is the premier leadership school in America, and very fond of it and the way they go about breaking you down and then rebuilding you and teaching you,
hmm
the fundamentals of leadership. West Point was awesome for me. It was kind of set the baseline. Uh, I didn't grow up in a military family. My father was in the Air Force way before I was born, so I didn't experience military life. I was fortunate enough to have a World War II vet pat me on the back after a football game and begin
hmm
to introduce me to what the United States Military Academy was, and that kind of started me on my journey. But West Point's special, but the education's a little bit different. So I averaged about 19 to 21 credit hours a semester. Plus, you're up every morning. As a plebe, you basically, as a plebe or a freshman, you make the academy run, and you're
Mm,
delivering laundry. You're delivering. Back then, there was hard copy newspapers.
yeah.
You're calling minutes. Basically, or the alarm clock to notify everybody where they have to be, what they're supposed to be wearing, and
Mm.
what the agenda is in a very loud and obnoxious way in the hallway, standing
Yeah.
underneath the clock. So it's like having, you're going to school, you have a job because in the morning you're doing duties, and then in the afternoon, once you get done with class, you do some duties, and then depending on what day it was, it would rotate between military training and some sort of athletic competition, right?
Mm.
You'd have intramurals if you weren't on a core squad or varsity team, and play a sport, from football, volleyball, boxing,
Wow.
swimming. And then on the days where it was military training, you would do some sort of military education, but more frequently than not, it was drill, right? So you'd be
Mm.
marching in a parade or practicing for a parade that was coming up for some dignitary that was coming to the school. So I mean, from 5:30 in the morning
Mm.
until 11:30 at night, you were doing something. And so you had to, if you were a good student, you squeezed in studying sometime, after dinner.
Oh my, that is I don't know. Even I have a light familiarity, but that is surprising, honestly. Like even the number of credit hours, that's almost probably double or at least 60% more than most students take probably in college these days. And it's interesting how I didn't realize that the students are what make the college run.
Yeah. And then just the values and just
Hmm
being in the buildings there is fascinating. You're walking up granite steps that have been there so long that they're divoted in from the number of
hmm
cadets that have walked up them. And you're in the same place that MacArthur, Eisenhower, all these famous generals have been,
hmm
and it's neat. It's a neat place. The history is amazing. What they instill in you in values, duty, honor, country, the
hmm
honor code, and West Point has a unique version of the honor code because there's the toleration clause. A cadet will not lie, cheat, or steal, nor tolerate those who do. So
Mm.
um, it's just it's a neat place. I thank God I don't have to do it again, but I would in a heartbeat.
But you would in a heartbeat. So even you look back on it and think, okay, it was very difficult, but I would absolutely do that again.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I love that place. I mean, it made me who I am, started me on
Mm.
my journey.
And I like how you described it initially as the preeminent leadership, like place to learn leadership, because I don't know that people always recognize how intentional West Point is specifically about teaching leadership and leadership approach and what that means. There's not a lot of environments that are that intentional about teaching leadership specifically as a skill. For a lot of people, it's kind of the thing you learn by doing. But in West Point, that is one thing I've heard for years is like the intentionality around leadership.
Yeah, the first thing you learn is how to follow. I mean, you show up, they shave your head, put you in a funny uniform,
Yeah.
and they teach you how to receive orders and what it feels like to receive orders. And And then from then on, you get put in charge, your sophomore year, or your yearling year, or yuck, as we called it. You
Hmm.
get one or two plebes, and then the next year you're squad leader. So you get a couple yuck, you get,
Oh.
three or four plebes, and then the next year you're a platoon leader. And then some people move up to be, even company commanders or in charge of regiments or
Mm.
the corps, the head of the Corps of Cadets. So
Mm.
they're teaching you to lead from the start, and you're learning while other people your age. That's the unique thing. Uh,
Mm.
it's it's a bunch of college students trying to figure this out, and there's a smattering of Army officers that have more experience in there. You'll have a TAC officer that's usually a senior captain or a major, so they've been in the Army for 9 to 13 years, and then you'll
Mm.
have a TAC NCO that probably has about 17 or 18 years of experience that's there, but they're covering down on over 100 cadets. So you look at them as examples, but really you're learning from each other and you're learning from your mistakes, which then translate
Mm.
the same thing you do when you get into the Army.
Right. Okay. So, I mean, whether you were at West Point or any other time in your career, did you plan or aim to be a CEO of an organization? Was that a goal of yours at any point?
No, my life is kind of, I've been blessed and been, the God has guided me in a direction that I didn't know where I was going. So when I was young, I wanted to be a pediatrician.
Hmm.
And I'll never forget, my parents introduced me even 5 years after I graduated West Point. This is our son. He was going to be a doctor. So I was, one of the
Oh,
reasons
parents.
one of the reasons why I took 21 credits a semester is because I was pre-med. I thought I wanted to be a
Mm.
doctor. But while I was at West Point, I got on a tank and I fell in love. And that's what I wanted to do. I decided I don't want to grow up. I don't want to be a doctor.
Yeah.
I want to command soldiers riding in these vehicles. And I loved it. So I didn't think I was going to be a CEO when I was young. I thought I was going to be a doctor. Well, then
Yeah.
at West Point, I wanted to be an armor officer, but I didn't know how long that was going to last. I knew I had a 5 year commitment. I knew I liked the leadership, topics that I learned at West Point, but I didn't realize how much I was going to love the Army.
Mm.
So when I got out and got in the Army, I fell in love with soldiers. I love leading soldiers, taking care of soldiers,
Mm.
being with soldiers on the ground, and um, very early on thought I was going to do that for the rest of my life.
Mm.
And then, life happens, things happen, family members get sick, and you realize, okay, I can't do this forever. And a natural transition time, I achieved really what I considered my ultimate goal, which was battalion command.
Mm.
And then decided to get out of the Army, and I went and worked for the Texans. Never thought I was going to be, I knew who was in charge of the Texans. So I
Yeah.
never thought I was going to be a CEO. And then one day got a pat on the shoulder and asked to do this job. So
Mm. Okay. So I think it's really timely we're having this conversation, just thinking about, for those who might listen to it later, we're in kind of Q2 to Q3 of 2025. And I think about how turbulent times are right now and the roles you've had in strategy, whether it's military strategy, business strategy, strategy from an NFL athletics perspective. And in today's environment, I'm wondering how you're approaching strategy, or how do you think we should approach strategy when you have just an environment of so much change and dynamics?
yeah, I mean, that's what strategy's for, right? When you have a
Mm.
complex environment that's, you know, constantly changing and is unknown and unknowable, that's
Mm.
when you need strategy, right? It's all about, strategy at its basic point is about maintaining a position of relative advantage. And so, how do you go about doing that? How do you frame your environment? And the way I look at it, the way I was taught, I was fortunate enough to go to the School of Advanced Military Studies at Fort Leavenworth. Uh, the SAMS program is a program that the Army has to grow strategic leaders, and
Mm.
about 120 officers and Department of Defense employees and other agencies go there once a year, and you get an amazing, the best educational experience I've had, and it
Mm.
had to do with timing too, right? I was at that moment in my life where I was going to dedicate myself to something and could really study and appreciate it. But it was a phenomenal program to get a master's in strategy there, and so. it's ingrained in me that it's basic. You look at, okay, where do we want to go?
Mm-hmm.
Where are we? And then you figure out, lines of effort, lines of operation, and an operational approach to get from where you are to where you want to go. But in between is the environment and what are the things that can happen. And so sometimes there's black swan events where you completely need to reframe, throw out the plan and start over, but those are
Mm-hmm.
rare, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so if you really do design and design thinking and think about, okay, what's going on in the environment, who are all the relevant actors,
Mm-hmm.
um, do we believe they're acting rationally? If not, how do we deal with that? And you draw these diagrams and connections, and then you figure out how you get from where you are, where you want to go, and you set a
Mm-hmm.
plan.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that that sounds simple to me, Steve. I
It's
know it
really
sounds,
not that hard.
I don't know that that sounds simple to me. I'm curious, you use words like line of effort and line of operation. Can you explain a little bit more about what you mean about that?
Yeah, so in civilian terms, they kind of blur together, right?
Okay.
So when I'm thinking, I like to bucket tasks
Mm-hmm.
into areas.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just buckets of when you're looking at where you want to be,
Mm-hmm.
you're looking across all criteria. If it was a military operation, it was where how do I want the enemy to be when I get to my end state? Or what are my conditions that I want to have when I get to my end state? Where am
Mm-hmm.
I in terms of the terrain? All those things. So you'd have line of operations that would get you to those different areas.
Mm-hmm.
In the civilian world, when I'm developing a strategy, I look at, okay, so what are the characteristics of the desired end state? If we're talking about, football business operations and we're really looking at the fan experience, it's along food and beverage, it's along
Mm-hmm.
traffic, it's along,
Okay.
the in-game experience, the pre-game experience, the post-game experience. And so you kind of put those in those buckets and you set criteria for each of them of what success looks like.
Okay. Yes, makes sense. And I know you've, through some of the strategic work, you've achieved a lot of metrics and success, NFL, business, military. Like, is there any lesson learned that you feel like from applying this that we could apply in today's environment, like from doing these strategic exercises and kind of allowing them to help you achieve big results? Like, is there a lesson learned, do you think, from that?
There's a million lessons learned. I mean, I've
Yeah.
learned so much
Yeah.
in my life, but I would say the biggest thing is you set these goals and you
Hmm.
have to, it's like a garden, you got to tend to it. And so the
Hmm.
most important thing that you can do probably before rehearsing what you're trying to do, right? So you practice
Yeah.
before you go do it. But the second most important thing I would say is after action reviews.
Mm,
And so you take a look at what you did, what was supposed to happen, what did happen, what are the things that went well that we want to keep doing,
mhm,
and then what are the things that didn't go the way we wanted them to that we want to improve.
mhm.
And you have people, and this goes back to trust. You have the team in the room that executed the things that you asked them to do,
Yeah.
and you facilitate a discussion where people can be open and honest and take ownership of what they did and not get punished for it. And it's all
Mm,
about improvement. And so if you have an environment where everybody in the room trusts that this is just about getting better, it's
yeah.
not about, no one's going to be punished for doing something wrong. We can admit, and you can have a conversation with one of your peers, subordinates, or superiors that says, hey, you kind of messed this up, and this is the way I think it should have gone. And you can have that conversation with egos checked at the door. The
Yeah.
organization's going to get better every time you
Mhm,
do it. And that's a
mhm,
really hard thing. That's probably the hardest environment to create.
mm. Because of the trust required, because of the what makes it so challenging to create, you think?
So everybody needs to go into the room understanding the purpose and why you're
Mm,
in there, knowing that it's just to get better. They have
mhm,
to have trust in everybody in the room because
mhm.
everybody's going to be talking about, if it's me, they're going to be talking about what I did, how I
Yeah.
performed. And then
Mhm,
I have to check my ego, which is the single most important thing, but also the hardest thing for everybody in the room to not get
mhm,
offended, not, go in there with true intentions of improvement. And once you achieve that, though, it's unstoppable. You're going to get
mhm.
better. But
Yeah. Yeah, that's so good. And I could see that being so challenging in today's environment. I feel like we're often so go, 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 like what's the next thing? What's the next thing that we don't prioritize this? Okay, what did we act this reflection? Like what did we learn from what we actually did? How can we get better? But I could see that discipline for sure. I mean, there's, helping you to get better. It being a worthy investment. It's just you have to pre-think it, pre-plan for it, kind of pre-invest your time to make sure you actually do it.
And
Yeah.
then document it and log it
Mm.
and save it and go back to it and revisit it.
Mhm.
Because sometimes, it could be an event that you have once a year. And so
Mhm.
you have that event, the next week you go through the after action review, you sit down, and then 11 months, 10 months later, you're planning the next one and you've forgotten all the lessons learned. So you have to take out that piece of paper and that document, dust it off and review it and remember we're not going to make the same mistakes.
Right. Oh, that's so important. Because how many times do we get to something we've done before and it's like, wait, what did we do last year? It's like you're starting over from scratch as opposed to starting over from a better place, like from what you learned last time. So yes, I get that completely. Well, let me ask you this. So you worked in athletics, you worked with a lot of elite athletes. Is there anything you took from your time in sports that applies to your leadership today in terms of just working with these elite athletes and
Absolutely. I mean, just
Mhm.
watching them. I mean, I wasn't on the football side, but watching them practice and the intentionality and the scrutiny that they put on themselves down to like
Mhm.
the individual move and holding themselves accountable. And it's not practice makes perfect, it's perfect practice makes perfect.
Mm,
And so, really understanding the value of a limited amount of time to practice something and setting all the conditions and everything around that practice so that you could focus on what's supposed to happen um,
mm,
is very important, and being intentional about setting the conditions and then improving each time, right? So when you recognize something didn't go right, taking the time to go back and redo it until you get it right.
mhm,
It was, it reminded me a lot of my military time, but
mm,
at the same time, the way they approached it and how they set the conditions was at another level.
mm,
Like practices were held to a standard that most people don't realize.
mm. Is there a way to apply that, do you think, outside of athletics, like in our, personal lives, work lives? Like how can you or how do you apply that or how could we apply that forward into just kind of everyday settings?
Absolutely. And it's really hard when you talk about your personal life.
Yeah.
But
Really.
we'll touch on professional life first.
Yeah.
So no matter what you're doing, it's
Mhm.
about setting conditions to be successful. And so
Mhm.
having a deliberate plan,
Mhm.
rehearsing that plan,
Mhm.
understanding, thinking about all the aspects and the why you're doing each action within whatever you're performing. Whether, we just
Mhm.
had a retirement party for one of our employees that's been with the company almost 30 years.
Wow.
Being intentional about how we plan that and every aspect of it and having a conversation about this is why we're doing this and setting the conditions for that to be successful, then going to the location, looking at the location, making sure everything's right, and then asking everybody, all the smart people in the room, okay, so what are we missing?
Mhm.
What else do we? And so setting those conditions so that that is that event is intentional and is as perfect as we can get it. And then going back, because the team, they get done with
Mhm.
practice, the next thing they do after they shower is they go watch film. They watch the film of the practice to review it and see, okay, how
Mm.
can we improve? What did we do wrong? And it's those setting the time, not just for the event, but what
Mhm.
needs to surround the event for the event to be as good as you can make it.
Mm. And and then how would you apply that in personal life? What was your what's your thought about that?
It's, I mean, whether it's a relationship like with my
Mhm.
wife,
Mhm.
really thinking through how do I, if I want to spend quality time with my wife, what are the things that I need to do? Preparing myself, preparing the environment so that, and I'm not saying I'm good at this. She
Okay.
probably, I'm glad she's not here to critique me right
I'm going to
now.
have to let her comment on the podcast.
But then, but being intentional and being
Yeah.
present and
Mhm.
understanding how important that is and putting the
Mhm.
same value on those moments as I do my, a professional event or
Mm.
task. Um, Now AARs don't go over so well, so we won't do those. But yeah,
AARs? What
after action review.
oh, after action reviews. Okay. Yeah, you maybe take those out on the personal
Yeah,
side, but
yeah, don't
nonetheless.
do those that doesn't work out well.
Oh, goodness. Okay. Yes, that makes complete sense. And just the intentionality of the preparation, the practice, the kind of
Well,
looking at things after both, yeah, professionally and personally, for sure. Yeah.
and for me, it's more about preparing myself when it comes to the personal stuff. And
Mm,
because, after a busy day at work or a busy week at work,
yeah.
I need to make sure I'm in the right mindset to be the best that I can be for my spouse. And
Hmm.
I am, I would give myself a D plus on that one.
Oh, yes, I understand that. I mean, even for like kids, like both of our kids are kind of older now, but I think about when my daughter was younger and just I remember that transition from kind of working. I was working in an office. You're working in an office for however many hours. You come home and you kind of feel like you're now on your second job. It's like, so I changed my clothes. It's like out of my work clothes into my sweats, and you're in your second job, but your mindset is not always, it's still kind of left sometimes at the job, which might have been stressful or tense or whatever it might have been. And it can be hard to not bring that into, like you're saying, your personal relationships. So, yeah, I remember trying to do some intentional things around kind of when I opened the door, it's like I'm off this job, I'm on to my new job. But yeah, just trying to do some very intentional things so that you can prepare yourself for a different environment, a different experience, even. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Hmm. I know you've made a lot of decisions under pressure. Like I think about the military as being, in my mind, the highest pressure situation. Given you were also in, in combat areas, but also I'm sure in business and athletics, like it's still high pressure. How do you make decisions under pressure? Like, how do you stay grounded? How do you make decisions when the pressure is high?
Yeah. So, after leading in combat, it's pretty easy in
Mm,
it gives you perspective.
mm,
But the thing is it doesn't matter if you've ever led in combat or you're just leading in the civilian world. The most, the hardest decision or the hardest moment you've ever experienced is still the hardest moment you've ever experienced. So when you're going through
mm-hmm,
it, there's no difference.
mm-hmm,
And so, for me, it's one thing that I try to do is, and this is the way I try to get my team to help make these decisions because it's a team effort, but recognizing when the decision's coming and knowing what the decision is and predicting that decision and having all the data prepared ahead of time so when it comes you're ready to make the decision and you know what it's going to be. But
mm-hmm.
that doesn't always work out that way. So
Yeah.
then the way I work is it's a team effort. So I bring my experts in a room if I have the time, and we'll have a discussion and we'll walk through, like we said, where are we? Where do we want to be? Who are the
Yeah.
the relevant actors in the space, and what's the desired outcome? And we'll go through a decision making process, whether it's a whiteboard or session, with a decision matrix and what are the decision criteria that are going to drive the decision.
Mm-hmm.
But it's all about slowing things down, taking a deep breath,
Mm-hmm.
and realizing that you have a team, and everything's a team business unless you're
Mm,
playing golf or wrestling,
yeah.
and it you work as a team and you slow things down, and and as the leader you have to stay calm in those environments because
Mm,
calm is contagious, and you want the team to stay calm, be clear minded, not get uptight, not be worrying about anything. So it's more for me, it's more about creating an environment where I can get the right people in the room. I can
mm-hmm.
maintain a calm, cool, collected environment,
Yeah.
and we can analyze all the facts. And if I can't do that and I'm doing it myself, then
Mm-hmm.
I just remember, where are we? Where do we want to be? I'm sure we've talked about this decision in a meeting at one point.
Mm-hmm.
And I lean on the knowledge that my team has provided me.
Mm. Yeah, it's kind of interesting. It's like a juxtaposition a little bit when you say, I need to make a decision under pressure. And then, like, one of your strategies is to slow it down. Like,
Mhm.
not saying slow down the decision, but kind of slow down the process. Like, put some calm so that people can then think more clearly, offer better ideas. Like I think that's an interesting contrast because I think sometimes when we feel the pressure, we kind of amp up. But the idea of like slowing down in that moment for the decision is really interesting.
Yeah, so the first question, so the most important commodity in anything is time. So the
Hmm.
first question when I get put in one of these situations is when do we have to make the decision
Hmm.
and how does time work? Does it work against us or does it work for
Hmm.
us? Does our position get better the longer we wait or does it get
Hmm.
worse the longer we wait? And if I know those two things, I can set the timeline to make that decision.
Mm, yeah. Yeah. Because sometimes we have more time than we think, for sure. I
Well,
think
and a lot of times in business, time is to your advantage.
it's,
Waiting could improve your position a little bit. So understanding that. Now it may not, and if it doesn't, then you need to be in a little bit bigger of a hurry, but you
hmm.
still slow down and make the right decision.
Hmm.
Because you never want to, I had a saying when I was in the military, never be in a hurry to die.
Mm,
And
yes.
so,
Yes. Right. Yes. Never, ever. And even the idea, like I think it's interesting that your perspective that this decision or this pressure might be the greatest pressure someone else has faced, even though it may not be the greatest pressure anyone has faced, I think is just really empathetic because I think sometimes as leaders, when we're talking with people about what they're going through or their situation, it can be easy to think about it in your own context and it can feel like, oh, like if you're to think, oh, it's not that big a deal, or it's not, because you're putting it in your frame of reference on what big deal means or how high pressure this is. But the idea that it could be the biggest decision or the most pressure they've ever faced, I think that's really important. Yeah.
I agree.
I don't think I'd thought about that before. Yeah.
Yeah, I really believe empathy is one of the most important characteristics of a leader
Mm,
because your job is to get the best out of your team. It's not for you to be the best. It's to get the
right.
best out of your team.
Hmm. So what do you think in that vein, what do you think most civilians kind of get wrong or misconceptions we have about leadership in the military?
Yeah, this is a big one for me, and I've ran into it a lot. I think we talked about it at lunch the other day.
Yeah.
It's fascinating to me that people believe that the structure and the rank and all that, the formal leadership parameter characteristics that are put around soldiers, airmen, Marines,
Hmm.
and sailors make leading easy, and that they have to do what you say.
Hmm.
That's not how it works out when people are shooting at you, right? There's a natural response when your life, it's fight or flight, and
Yeah.
you have to create this sense of trust because you're asking people to put their lives at risk. And
Hmm.
so if they don't trust you, would you care what rank was on their chest if they told you to
Yeah.
go put your life in danger?
Hmm.
There has to be this sense of trust that's built over time through doing exercises, training, and
Hmm.
having, common experiences together where you earn that trust. So that's a big misconception that, oh yeah, because you had rank on your sleeve or on your shirt, that people are just going to do whatever you say. Yeah, that works for the most part in garrison,
Hmm.
but not in
Hmm.
combat. And then the other thing is, I don't think it's recognized how much care is put into leading soldiers, right? How much leaders, well, good leaders in the military care about their team.
Hmm.
And just take the word subordinate, right? This was an interesting thing for me because when I first got out of the army, I used that word. Well, it's looked down upon, it's considered derogatory in the civilian world. To
Hmm.
me, that means someone that I love, someone that I will wake up at 1 o'clock in the morning and go help if they need it. It's
Yeah.
someone who I know their family. I know the age of their kids. I want to take care of them and maximize their capability, but they're part of my team.
Hmm.
And it's just it's an interesting. I firmly believe that there is more empathy in the leaders in the military, um, by way more than 3.5 times than in the civilian world, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And you know what? I think I've shared, I saw that and I remember being so surprised by that. My dad was in the military, but he was kind of out by the time I was old enough to kind of know what was going on. But my husband was in the military when we were dating and when we first got married. And I remember thinking, oh, it's so interesting the conversations he has with people about their marriages, their children, their financials, kind of their whole life. And I feel like now a lot of people kind of crave that in their work environment, like that you're seeing someone as a whole person. Like you're
Hmm.
not just worried about, Arlene, how she shows up in these few hours at work. You're really worried about the whole person, how her whole life is going, which is what I saw from him and what you're saying in the military. But I think outside in, that's not what you expect at all. Like you really don't see that, but that is absolutely what I saw from him and kind of what you're saying as well. It's much more whole person.
Yeah, I mean, there's a reason for it,
Yeah.
but I never really thought about the reason while I was doing it. It just becomes
Hmm.
part of you. But the reason for it is, if you're out on patrol or you're out, in combat,
Yeah.
you want that soldier thinking about what they're doing. You don't want them thinking about a troubled relationship. You don't want them thinking about financial problems. You don't want them thinking about, problems with their children. You want them focused on the task at hand. So if you can do anything to help them, it
Mm,
it protects you, it protects them, it protects everybody around you by having them be keyed on in the best that they can be.
mm,
And so it becomes ingrained in you to take care of these people and to make sure that you're involved in their lives and they know that they can count on you, to give them the best advice and help them through those things. It just becomes
yeah.
part of the way you lead.
Has that translated for you, Steve, into these more athletic, corporate, kind of private companies, like as you transition out of the military into these environments where I don't know, sometimes that's practice, sometimes it's really not. Like, has that translated for you into these other environments from a leadership standpoint?
Yes, I mean, I can't change it. It's part
Okay.
of me, right? I mean,
Hmm.
it's when you lead soldiers and you do that for, 20 years of your life,
Yeah.
half of your life or almost half,
Hmm.
it becomes ingrained in you. It does create some awkward conversations where like, why do you care about that? Well, because I care
Yeah.
about you.
Uh-huh.
And people aren't used to it, but I'm not going to change that. That's just who I am. And if that's not accepted, then I'll find something else to do. And so
Mm,
far, I
yeah.
think it really helps build that trust that's essential in
Mm.
a really productive, high functioning organization.
Hmm. Yeah. And when I think back on some of the best leaders I've had, they were absolutely whole person leaders. Like they knew about me, they knew about my family. Like we were in a full relationship. Certainly we got great things done at work, but it was much beyond that. But yeah, I imagine that stands out more in today's environment because it's just not as common. Not everyone kind of grew up with that concept of a leader, so it's probably just not as common. So interesting.
Mhm.
What about like how I on these deployments you've had and just the times away from family, kind of how did you maintain connection to family while deployed or while in these military environments? And I guess a couple things are in my mind. One, just the time and distance. We have friends now who are who are in the military and one spouse is away and back. Um, and then also you're just in such a different environment in the military
Mhm.
than your family. So I'm just curious, like, what were ways you maintained connection while deployed or just in the military in general?
Yeah, so starting out, it was much harder, right? So I took part in the invasion of Iraq. So 2003, this is before FaceTime. Uh,
Mm,
you know, over the years, the war on terror, the amenities provided to soldiers in camps or in their FOBs, forward operating bases,
hmm.
drastically changed.
Okay.
Um, I got a I got to call my wife once a month during the invasion.
Wow.
We mainly relied on writing letters,
Hmm.
and it wasn't much different than Vietnam, World War II. It was a
Yeah.
lot of writing letters. Now, I would go and steal the squadron. I was a lieutenant at the time. I'd steal the
Yeah.
squadron commander's sat phone and allow
Yeah.
everybody in my troop to make a phone call, and then I would call and then go put it back as if, it never was gone.
Right.
Um, that was like once a month. And
Mm.
then Towards the end, though, we had the internet, there was Wi-Fi, so I would FaceTime my last deployment. I would FaceTime my wife when I woke up in the morning and before I went to bed
Oh.
every night. But what is difficult is, and my wife is a saint, and I have the utmost respect for the leader that she is of our family because I would leave, not just on deployments. I mean, we'd go on training exercises and be gone for months, and
Mm.
I would be out of the house. She'd be alone with our two children, and she'd, running the house by herself. And so I'd leave, she takes charge, she's running it her way, and then I'd come back in, and of course I'm like, "Okay, I'm the father, I'm back in the house. Everybody's gonna
Yeah.
listen to me." And she's like, that's not the way it works. I've been running this thing for. And so there was
Yeah.
always this, you have the honeymoon period where you're really happy to see each other, but in that there's natural, redefining boundaries and who does
Yeah.
what.
Mm.
And I really believe, we just celebrated our 25th anniversary.
Aw,
Those
congratulations.
That separation and coming back really forced us to learn how to communicate,
Mm.
to learn to understand each other,
Yeah.
and to respect each other and what we brought to the table. So, yeah, it was a blessing and very, very difficult at the same time.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, I could see the connect. I hadn't thought about how technology has probably made the at least the frequency of communication better now. Because once you said that, I remembered when Kel was in the military initially, I think we did it was like a telegraph. Like I had to go to the base to type something that would then be sent to his ship. Like it was really different. But that's good to know that people do have access to FaceTime and all of those kind of things now. And yeah, the differences in roles and the communication because that's real, even if you change a different job sometimes, like how you can show up, travel, etcetera, can change the dynamic in the family. So I could see how that would improve communication. Congratulations on 25 years.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'll tell you what a good friend of ours said who's been married a very, very long time. When we got to our 25th anniversary, they said, "Congratulations on a great start."
Yeah,
Who said start? It was like I thought I'd achieved something. They're like, keep going. So
yeah. My
um
parents are about to celebrate their 60th, so yeah.
oh. Okay, you understand. And that's amazing. Congratulations to your parents. Like, is there anything you feel like you learned from growing up, your family, early life experiences that kind of helped you thrive? I think it's interesting what we take from, those early years that can kind of stay with us our whole life. Is there anything you learned from those early years or from your family that really kind of sticks with you today?
Absolutely. I mean, my parents instilled, we're a traditional, um, not very well off family growing up. My mom was a checker at the grocery store. My dad worked for
Mhm,
the phone company, and like I said, he was enlisted in the Air Force before I was born. But they instilled Christian values in me, got me started, and were
mhm,
the reason why I went to West Point.
mhm.
They pushed me. My mom is probably one of the most competitive people I've
Okay.
ever met, and probably the worst winner that I've ever
I like
met.
her already.
But they pushed me, harder than, I wanted to be pushed, and held me accountable, but also, it was a home filled with love, and
Mm,
I wouldn't be where I am without them and the example they set. And I mean, just their marriage, right?
mm.
I look up to them, and I hope, Tracy and I are looking back, and saying, wow, we made it 60 years.
Yeah, that's amazing. And what do you from the other side, what do you hope your kids take away from watching you lead and serve in all these different settings? Like, what do you hope they take away from watching you lead in all these different ways and different settings?
Yeah, well, I hope they see why I did it because I put them, I mean, my son moved 11 times in 20 years
Mm,
or in his life, and
mhm,
my daughter moved 10 times. I
mm,
hope they understand why. I hope they see me as someone that'll stand up for what I believe in, and
mhm,
they understand the value of our country and how blessed we are to be Americans.
mhm,
Um, and I hope they learn how I make decisions and what character means, and
mm.
they learn from my mistakes too, because I wasn't perfect,
Yeah.
and they know that they saw it. But I hope I hope and pray that they have a relationship like me and my wife have,
Mhm.
and they're happy in what they do.
Welcome to Anelra. Have you ever thought about unlocking the full potential of yourself or the leaders in your organization? Imagine the impact of executive coaching. Ready to transform your leadership impact? Visit us at www.anelratalent.com. Anelra, coaching solutions that work. So, I guess in closing, let me ask you two questions. One is just if you think about leadership and where we are right now in the country and just in this time of business, like what's something you hope people take away from the conversation as it relates to leadership?
I don't know if we've really discussed it, but I hope
Yeah.
they realize that it's a skill that you have to practice.
Mm,
And I've been fortunate enough to have my background and grow up through the military where I was given the opportunity to lead people from the time I was 22. And I made lots of mistakes and learned from them and just honed that skill. And I hope they look at it from the perspective that if they want to be a good leader, they need to practice and they need to educate themselves. But doing is always a better, way of learning than reading about it, because
yeah.
not everybody that writes books about it has done it.
Hmm.
And then I hope they realize that the people that are leading them are learning.
Yeah.
And so you, as a follower, I mean, it's following is a skill too, and
Mhm.
you can follow and lead up and help your leadership, or you can follow and hurt your leadership and not give
Mhm.
them the grace and realize that they're learning too. And
Mhm.
so I hope people realize it's a skill and you have to practice. If you don't practice, you're not going to get better. You have to educate yourself. You have to learn about leadership. You have to learn about people, because that's what leadership is. I mean, it's the privilege that people who are willing to follow you give you.
Mhm. Yes, that's true because they don't have to. They don't have to follow. And yeah, it is a skill you can practice, and I hope that's encouraging for people because sometimes you absolutely make mistakes as leaders, and you don't always feel like you're good at it. And I think sometimes people think people are kind of born either you're good or bad at being a leader, and the reality is, to your point, good leaders have done a lot to practice and learn, and it sounds like you've done that as well and you've had these great experiences. But that yeah, we can get better. Like if we don't feel like we're doing it great now or we didn't do it great yesterday or 2 weeks ago, um, it's something we can get better. It's something we
Yeah,
can do better.
it's like any sport, right? Some people
Yeah.
are born 6'10",
Yeah.
and that helps them at basketball. But just being 6'10" doesn't make you a great basketball player.
Mhm.
Some people are born with charisma that can help you as a leader, but it
Mhm.
doesn't make you a good leader. You got to practice.
Mhm. Yeah. And that follow and I think you said did you say lead up or follow
Lead up, yeah.
lead up? That is so important. I think that was my biggest lesson in leadership early on in life was more how to follow, and have more empathy for leaders. And then when I became one, I realized how difficult the job is, and how much grace we all need. So yeah, that following, we can all do better at that anytime. Yeah. So how do you personally, last question, how do you personally work well, live well? Meaning, what are your best one or two tips for just creating a meaningful life in general?
Yeah, again, it goes back to being intentional and knowing what desired end state is. I had a great mentor. He was my professor of entrepreneurship at Rice, and he put us through this project called The Life of Meaning. And the
Mhm.
first thing we did was we wrote our obituary. Um, and what do you want that to say? How do you want people to look at you when it's all said and done? And what do understanding where you want to be, and then leading a life that gets you there. And it's a bunch of small decisions,
Mm,
and you got to continue to make those good decisions. It's character, right? So
yeah.
you practice good character, you practice making the decisions that get you where you want to be. That's how you do it. And work-life balance, it's not a thing. I don't
Mhm.
like to call it balance. You have to manage it like a bank account, right? You put money in, you take money out, and you have to recognize where your balance is at and know where you're at.
Yes. Oh, I love that. Yes. And just the intentionality across both of those. A meaningful life. That sounds like a great class to take.
It
Gosh.
was amazing. It was,
Yeah.
yeah.
So, Stephen, thank you so much for joining. I appreciate your time, your insights, you just sharing from your experiences in a way that helps us all continually practice and get better at leadership. So, thank you so much for joining.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Work Well, Live Well podcast. If you're ready to grow as a leader or as an organization, head to enelratalent.com. That's ENELRA talent.com to learn how we can support you. Like what you heard? Follow or review the show so you don't miss what's next.